The latest on the chaos that continues to unfold in the Middle East. Earlier today, Israel's military launched deadly strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. This just hours after the Iran-backed militant group's latest attack on Israel. In all, 9 people killed and 3 others injured. Joining us now to discuss all things surrounding that is Natasha Hausdorff. She's an expert on international law, human rights, and national security. Good to see you, Natasha, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Guy. Great to be with you.
Let's start off with the main issue, what I would say, and that is, in layman's terms, can you really explain yet again why the Houthi attacked, let's say, Israel? Because yet again, this is really causing, well, let's say, a loss of stability in that region.
Well, indeed. And of course, these attacks by the Houthis, an Iranian proxy, on Israel have been going on over the past 14 months. More than 200 missiles, 170 drones across that period fired towards Israel. Not all of them reached Israeli territory, and it's important to say that Israel has been successful in shooting many of those missiles down. But the missile that hit ultimately a school in the Ramat Gan area in Israel yesterday, unfortunately it was partially intercepted, but the warhead was intact, and so there was substantial damage caused there. And of course that's apart from what the Houthis have been doing to international shipping, having attacked over 100 merchant vessels, also with drones and missiles. So the attacks by this Iranian proxy, and it's important to explain that the Houthis are acting on behalf of Iran, against Israel and against international shipping in order to destabilize the Middle East as a whole, have been going on for quite some time, as I say, over a year. It's only when Israel, it seems, responds, as it did yesterday for the 3rd time, striking military targets, including on this occasion for the first time in Sana'a. It's only when Israel responds, as it is entirely lawfully permitted to do, that it seems the international media pick up on this ongoing problem.
Yeah, obviously an issue that continues to plague Israel. Speaking of issues that continue to plague Israel, they are fighting multiple fronts, if you will, escalating threats, including Gaza, Hezbollah, and obviously now the Houthi. The question is, from a mental capacity, where do they go from here?
Well, you're absolutely right. The Houthis are not the only Iranian proxy that Israel has been attacked by and is continuing to fight. Hezbollah from Lebanon have been acting on behalf of the Iranians. Hamas, of course, when it launched the 7th of October attacks, was also an Iranian proxy. The impact that this has had on Israel, though, I think is important to see across the entirety of the 14 months that we have been witnessing. It was certainly a country that was caught by surprise on the 7th of October, but it has one that over the course of this year has plainly been able to turn the tables on its enemies, despite the enormous firepower that Iran had built up through these proxies in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Gaza, but also, of course, in Syria and Iraq. And what we've seen over the last couple of weeks with respect to the rebel takeover of Syria is very closely linked, inextricably linked, with the success that Israel has had against all of these Iranian proxies. So I'd say the impact in terms of, a mental sense in Israel, it's been a very, very hard year. But assessing it from this perspective, where Israel has been so successful militarily, a country that abides by the laws of war, international humanitarian law, that has been fighting these terrorist armies, all proxies of the Iranian Islamic regime, then I have to say that morale is, in that respect, extremely high. And the future of the Middle East as a whole seems to hold an awful lot of hope and promise as a result of Israel essentially fighting this war on behalf of all of us in the West.
Yeah, which leads me to my next question, that is to defend or not to defend. Obviously, a number of conversations, a plethora, if you will, of folks discussing whether or not Israel has the right to defend itself under international law.
Well, it's pretty extraordinary that this is even a topic for conversation. Article 51 of the UN Charter is often quoted in terms of referencing a right to self-defense. And I think it's important that your viewers understand that that article of the UN Charter recognizes an inherent right to self-defense. This is not even something that international law bestows on states. It is their God-given right, if you will. And in that respect, there's no question that Israel has the ability, the right, and is permitted in the context of the framework of international law to defend itself against these vicious attacks by barbaric terrorist armies. We can no longer be under any illusions as to what it is that they want to do to Israel, to Israelis, to Jews. Let's speak frankly here. We saw every evidence of that on the 7th of October, where they were able, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other Palestinian terrorist organizations, to break through the border. Let us not be under any illusions that this is exactly what Hezbollah had planned in the north of Israel and would have been able to execute those plans had Israel not successfully decimated the military capabilities of that terrorist Iranian proxy. But I think it's important that we understand that it's not just Israel's right to self-defense which is at stake here. Absolutely, these terrorist armies want to go after Western interests wherever they can. And in particular, where we look at the Houthis, relentless attacks on international shipping, it is so important that US, UK-led coalitions continue to ensure that these Houthi military installations are dealt with, that they are prevented, the Houthis, from continuing their attacks on international shipping, because of course that's also, quite apart from everything else, having an immense impact on international trade and the prices that ordinary consumers pay when they rely on the goods that are being shipped through these channels.
Natasha, got about a minute left. There's nothing like boots on the ground. In this case, you were recently actually in Israel. You have now returned to the UK, to my understanding. I'm hoping, briefly, can you describe what you were made privy to?
Well, I was just in Israel and I was giving a lot of briefings, including to members of the press. But a little earlier this year, in September, I was also on the ground in Gaza. I went in with the 162nd Division into Rafah and along the Philadelphi corridor. And what I can tell you is, having witnessed the security implications of Israel's presence in those areas with my own eyes, having witnessed the strategic importance also of the Philadelphi corridor, which runs along the border with Egypt, under which Hamas had been smuggling Iranian munitions, fueling its terror infrastructure in Gaza for most of the last decade. We can see the importance of Israel maintaining a security presence there, because it cannot rely on international assurances. It certainly cannot rely on the Egyptians to keep their end of the bargain. So, as you say, unfortunately, Israel's security presence in these areas will probably be necessary for some time.
It's going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays out. We've been joined by, yet again, Natasha Hausdorff. She is an expert on international law, human rights, and national security. Natasha, truly appreciate your time.
It's great to be with you. Thanks.
All right.